A soldier mother returned home in the middle of the night after a long deployment, only to be jolted by the sudden blood-curdling scream of her daughter coming from inside the house. When she rushed into the room and saw what lay before her, she was paralyzed. A fine mist fell over the suburban houses. The dim yellow light from windows fogged with condensation flickered through the windshield, making Captain Sarah Collins squint as she turned into the narrow driveway leading to her home. It had been nearly 3 months since she last held her daughter. Nearly 3 months stationed at a special training camp on the West Coast. No letters, no photos, just one objective: finish the assignment, come home. Her rain-soaked backpack slapped against her back, left hand gripping the strap, right hand still reaching for the spare key hidden under the porch light. The door opened without a sound. A wave of synthetic fragrance hit her, lavender and lemon scents she had never used in the house. The ceiling glowed softly under a row of white LED lights. The couch had been reupholstered. A candle burned steadily on the dining table. "Sarah?" Nathan's voice called out from the kitchen, surprised but not exactly unsettled. He wiped his hands on his apron and stepped out. "I didn't think you'd be back today." Nathan, the man Sarah met 2 years after her first wife died in a car crash. He was nearly 10 years her junior, once worked at a small coffee shop near the base. They had married after 8 months, partly because Lily needed a father figure in the house, and partly because Sarah believed she was ready to start over. Sarah gave a slight nod. "Got early leave. Thought I'd surprise you." Nathan smiled, brief and soft. "Lily will be thrilled. Where is she?" Sarah set her backpack down near the door and quickly scanned the room. There was no sign of a child having played there that day. No tiny shoes. No familiar stuffed animal draped over the arm of the couch. Everything was too neat, too still. "She went to bed, played a lot today, wore herself out," Nathan said, turning his back to her, voice steady. Sarah didn't respond. She slowly walked toward the stairs. She paused on the landing. Lily's room was dark, the door closed. No sound came from inside. Then suddenly, a scream tore through the air. "Mommy!" Without missing a beat, Sarah lunged forward, her hand reached for the doorknob, and it was locked. She stepped back half a pace, braced herself, and kicked hard. The door flew open. Light from the hallway spilled into the room. Inside, Lily was curled up in the corner, her face streaked with tears. Her nightgown was wrinkled. A faint red mark stood out on her left cheek, like it had just been made. Nathan was standing barely 2 steps from the child, still holding a small pillow, as if he had just thrown it onto the bed. For a few seconds, all 3 of them stood frozen in silence. Sarah stepped forward and dropped to her knees beside Lily. When she reached out and touched her shoulder, Lily flinched slightly. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. She just sat there, eyes staring blankly past her. She was messing around, running in the room, slipped and fell, then screamed. "I was just about to handle it," Nathan said. His voice was trembling but trying to hold steady. Sarah didn't look at him. She gently pulled Lily toward her, checking the back of her neck, an old bruise. Her small hands were ice cold. Sarah took off her jacket and wrapped it around her, holding her close. "You told me she was asleep," Sarah said, eyes still fixed on Lily. Nathan's voice grew stiff. "She was asleep at the time." Sarah picked Lily up. She didn't respond. Her arms hung limp, her head resting on Sarah's shoulder like her body had no strength left. A single tear slid silently down her cheek, soaking into Sarah's collar. She didn't wipe it away. She turned. Brooke and Margaret were standing at the top of the stairs. Brooke asked, "What happened? I only heard a scream." Sarah didn't answer. She walked steadily down the stairs, holding Lily in her arms. She passed Nathan. He moved to stop her, but didn't dare. In the living room, Sarah grabbed the throw blanket off the couch and gently covered her daughter. She laid her down on the long sofa, then she turned back facing the 3 of them, frozen in place. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice low and firm, like a military officer's command. No one said a word. Sarah walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. There was no carton of special milk, the kind Lily had to drink because she couldn't tolerate regular dairy. None of her familiar favorite foods were there. She looked around the kitchen. The little plastic cup shaped like an owl, her daughter's favorite, was nowhere to be found. She went back to the couch. Lily was still lying there, eyes open, silent. Sarah sat down and leaned in close. "Talk to me. What happened?" She kept her voice soft. Lily pressed her lips together and shook her head. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the first thing she said wasn't a word of comfort. "From now on, no one goes into your room except me. You understand?" Lily gave a slight nod, then whispered, "Are you leaving again?" Sarah didn't answer right away. That question, sharp and sudden, cut into her chest like a blade. "No," she said firmly this time. "I'm staying. I won't let anyone hurt you again." And in that moment, Sarah had no way of knowing that the promise she had just made, a mother's final vow, would become the beginning of a pain so cruel she couldn't have imagined it in her darkest thoughts. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch and stayed there all night, her head resting on Sarah's arm. She stirred slightly from time to time in her sleep, but did not make a sound. Sarah had not slept all night. She kept her hand on her daughter's shoulder, continuously watching her tiny face where the red mark on her cheek was now fading. When the sky began to dim with morning light, Sarah gently picked her up and carried her upstairs, without saying a single word to anyone. She turned the bedroom light to its lowest setting, tucked the blanket over her, then pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. Gently slipping her hand under the edge of the blanket, she began checking her joints, elbows, calves, wrist, the base of her neck, each movement made so gently that the child's sleep would not be disturbed. Beneath her left wrist there was a bruise, bluish purple, with yellow forming around the edges. The shape wasn't distinct, but it was there. On the back of her neck near the hairline, there was a faint round mark, like an old wound or the press of a fingernail. Sarah stopped breathing for a few seconds. She slowly pulled her hand back, stood up, and walked quietly toward the kitchen. Downstairs, the soft clinking of dishes was heard. Nathan was already dressed, his hair tied neatly in a bun, a spotless white apron tied around his waist. Brooke sat at the table in a gray hoodie, eating cereal with her feet propped up on the opposite chair. Margaret was pouring coffee. She looked at Sarah and gave a slight smile, as if nothing at all had happened the night before. "Want some coffee?" Nathan asked, still laying slices of bread on a plate. Sarah shook her head and leaned against the doorframe. "Is Lily still asleep?" Brooke asked casually, mouth half full. "She's tired," Sarah said, her gaze fixed on Nathan's hands as he sliced the butter. "What's that bruise on her cheek?" Nathan paused for a moment, then kept working as if he hadn't heard. "She probably fell yesterday. You know how she's always running around. I already told you." "And the mark under her wrist?" Sarah asked again, this time in a lower voice. Margaret silently took a sip of her coffee. "It's old, maybe from school, I don't know." Nathan turned to face her, expression blank, even giving a slight shrug. "Or maybe from when the housekeeper was still here before she left." That morning, Sarah did not report to work. She sent a brief message to her commanding officer. "My daughter isn't feeling well. I'll need to stay home a few days." But that wasn't the whole truth. She was no longer in doubt. She knew something was deeply wrong, but she didn't even know where to begin. And more than anything, why wasn't Lily saying anything? For 2 days, Sarah spent every moment with Lily. She didn't go to school. Sarah spoke to her teacher, Mrs. Harper, for homework, a woman who always spoke gently, but now there was hesitation in her voice. "Sarah, I've been meaning to speak with you for a while, but I assumed you were busy." Lily, she's been very quiet. She avoids eye contact. Sometimes she even pulls back when someone reaches toward her. Sarah's heart froze. "Did you ever see a bruise or a mark on her?" Mrs. Harper replied softly. "One time I noticed an old bluish bruise on her wrist, but she said she fell from a tree." I believed her. Maybe I shouldn't have. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah forced herself to open her diary. She hated herself for it, but she was a mother and a soldier. On the last page of the diary, there was only one line written: "When I don't make noise, everyone is happy." Sarah closed the notebook and stared at the wall. Fog was gathering outside the window. The world was silent, but a scream had awakened inside her. Sarah didn't think much that night. She was just a mother who would do whatever it took to protect her daughter. The next morning, she took Lily to a local child psychologist, Dr. Carner, whom she knew from a previous military consultancy case. Dr. Carner was a soft-spoken woman whose clinic was inside an old Victorian home, where sunlight streamed through the windows and the room smelled of books and cupcakes. Lily didn't say much at first. Sarah sat near the door and quietly watched as Dr. Carner offered her dolls, markers, and silence. After a few sessions one day, Lily drew a picture on paper. A small girl with her hands tied. Behind her stood a shadowy figure. Dr. Carner looked at Sarah, said no words, just nodded. That night, Sarah spoke to Nathan. Not for the first time, but this time she didn't stay silent. "I know," Sarah said. "I don't need explanations anymore." Nathan replied after a few seconds of silence, "You're misunderstanding. You always overthink." But Sarah's eyes weren't empty now. They were the same eyes that didn't blink in combat. "You're gonna take me to court, Sarah? Is that what you'll do? You know what this will cause?" Sarah didn't respond. She simply did one thing. The next morning, after sending Brooke to school, she held Lily's hand and went straight to family court. The court appearance was brief, but those moments settled in Lily's heart like a stone. Without raising her voice, Sarah submitted a written petition in family court that she needed separation for her daughter's protection, and the court gave a date for the preliminary hearing. The days that followed felt wrapped in fog. Margaret no longer made eye contact with Lily. Brooke had gone silent. Once she taunted, now she avoided eye contact. Nathan spent most of his time at work, or perhaps was just running away from home. But Sarah's silence was the deepest. Each night, she placed a chair outside Lily's room and sat there, and once Lily fell asleep, she would open her old military diary, where once she wrote wounds of war, now there was just one word: daughter. One evening, Sarah received a call she never imagined would come. "It's Carter. We served together, remember? I'm now with the Federal Child Case Unit. You filed the report?" "Yes," Sarah said softly. "I knew it. I know you. You never leave the innocent behind." There was moisture in Sarah's eyes, but her voice was steady. "This is my war, Carter, and this time, the enemy isn't out there, he's inside." The day of the hearing arrived. Sarah stood in the cold hallway of the county courthouse, dressed not in uniform, but in a simple charcoal coat. Her posture was straight, her eyes calm, but within, a quiet storm churned. Lily sat beside her, legs swinging slightly off the bench, clutching a small stuffed bear. She didn't ask questions. She only leaned her head against her mother's arm. And Sarah, a woman trained to endure war, felt more fragile than ever before. When their names were called, Sarah entered the courtroom holding Lily's hand. Nathan was already seated, flanked by his attorney. He didn't look up. Brooke wasn't there. Neither was Margaret. The judge, an older woman with a sharp gaze, asked the room to settle. Sarah spoke quietly but clearly. She did not read from any paper. She simply said, "Your Honor, I'm here today not because I want to break a home, but because I refuse to let my daughter live in fear inside one." The courtroom was silent. Nathan's lawyer objected, claiming emotional exaggeration, but the judge held up a hand. The psychologist's report was reviewed, drawings were submitted, and then the judge turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, do you want to say anything?" Lily didn't speak. She looked at Sarah. Sarah knelt beside her, took her hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to be brave for them. Just be honest for yourself." Lily looked down, took a shaky breath, and said just one sentence: "I don't want to go back there." Silence. The judge nodded once, then looked at Nathan. "Until further review, full temporary custody is granted to the mother. Visitation will be determined pending the final hearing." Sarah didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just pulled Lily close and held her like a shield, like a promise, like a soldier guarding home. The house felt different. Not quieter, just lighter. For the first time in months, Sarah opened the curtains without checking who was outside. Lily began humming to herself again, soft little tunes she used to sing while painting. They didn't talk much about the hearing. Some things, Sarah believed, needed air and sunlight more than words. Nathan had not reached out since the ruling, but one evening Sarah saw Brooke standing across the street, hands in her coat pockets, staring at their house. She didn't wave. She didn't move, just watched, and then turned away. A few days later, Lily came into the kitchen with a folded piece of paper. "Found this under my pillow," she said. It was a note written in Brooke's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought you were taking him away from me, but now I know. I hope you're safe." Sarah read it silently, folded it back. She didn't say a word, but something softened in her face. That weekend, Sarah took Lily to a lake 2 towns over. No headlines, no distractions, just water, sky, and time. They sat on the dock together. Lily dangled her feet in the water. "Will we ever have to go back?" she asked. Sarah looked at the horizon. "No, not unless you want to." "I don't." "Then we won't." That night, Lily slept without nightmares. And for the first time in a very long time, Sarah did too. A few weeks later, Sarah received a letter. It wasn't from the court, not from Nathan, not from Carter. It was from Margaret. "I was raised to ignore what made me uncomfortable, to pretend the silence meant peace. But silence is often where the worst things hide. I failed you, I failed her, but I will not fail myself again. If Lily ever wants to ask me why I didn't speak up, I won't blame her. I'll be here, not as a grandmother, but as someone learning how to be a better woman." Sarah folded the letter quietly. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply placed it in a drawer, the same drawer where Lily's drawings were kept, not for forgetting, for remembering. In time, Lily started attending art therapy. Each week, her drawings changed, from shadows to sunlight, from bound hands to open ones. One evening, she painted a picture of a house, not their current one, but a dreamlike one, full of light. Sarah asked, "Is that where you'd like to live someday?" Lily nodded. "I think that's where I already do." Sarah knelt beside her, brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and said, "Then I did my job." That night, no alarms were set, no doors double-locked, no diary entries written in urgency. Only a mother and her daughter sleeping in peace.